Once again, grab your powdered wigs because today we're headed back to Philadelphia in the summer of 1787. Same building where they signed the Declaration of Independence, only this time the enemy wasn't King George, it was their own government falling apart faster than a Walmart lawn chair. Imagine trying to run a country with duct tape, IOUs, group chat, where nobody agrees on anything. That was America. Taxes? Nope. National defense? Barely. Trade? Forget it. The states were basically 13 cousins fighting over grandma's inheritance. So 55 delegates showed up to do the political equivalent of fixing a car with 3 wheels, no engine, and a raccoon living under the hood. And what they hammered out that summer became the framework for what we've talked about already, the longest running government in world history. Today, we are talking about the framers of our Constitution. I'm your host, Jeff. Welcome to our republic.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political band,
sailors and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not one small step for man.
Those 3 hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
we pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
When we talk about the Constitution, it's easy to picture the parchment and the signatures. But behind that document were actually real men, real ones, not fake ones. Not ones that are pretending to be a different gender. They were men. The delegates who met in Philadelphia in 1787 are remembered as the framers of the Constitution. Together, they crafted a new government for a nation still finding its footing. So who were they? In total, 55 delegates attended the Constitutional Convention at various points, though only 39 signed the finished Constitution. They came from 12 of the 13 states. Rhode Island refused to participate, which, look how small Rhode Island is. Does it really matter? I don't think so. The framers represented a wide range of experiences. Some came from bustling cities like James Williams of Philadelphia, Nathaniel Gorman of Boston, and others from farms like John Dickinson in Delaware and Daniel Carroll in Maryland. They included professors, businessmen, farmers, soldiers, attorneys, ministers, physicians, and political leaders. Some were young. Jonathan Dayton was just 26 years old. Charles Pickney, only 29. Others were seasoned. Roger Sherman was 66 and Benjamin Franklin, the eldest, at 81. 8 of the delegates were immigrants, including Alexander Hamilton, James Wilson, and William Patterson. Most were open and active Christians representing a variety of denominations. So let's talk just about a few of them, right? Like James McHenry. Talking about the Christian institutions, right? And the denominations. James McHenry was the founder of the Maryland Bible Society. Rufus King, a founder of the New York Common Prayer Book Society. Roger Sherman, who wrote Christian theological works. Abraham Baldwin offered a professorship of divinity at theology at Yale. Divinity in theology at Yale. Alexander Hamilton, who proposed the Christian Constitution Society, and John Langdon and Charles Chatsworth Pickney, both founders of the American Bible Society. Faith, education, and civil service were woven through their lives. Attendance varied. James Madison was present every day, while William Pierce only attended a few sessions. Some men spoke frequently, like Governor Morris, 173 recorded speeches. James Wilson had 168 recorded speeches. Roger Sherman, 147. Others, such as William Livingston, only spoke twice. And William Few, he had 0. They spoke little, right? Several kept notes of the proceeding. Robert Yates and William Patterson recorded details, but Madison's record at the time was the most extensive. In fact, Franklin and Charles Pickering even handed Madison the text of their speeches so his notes would preserve them. The convention didn't start out with a single blueprint either, right? So those are the people that were there, but let's talk a little bit about what they brought to the table, okay? And 3 major plans were proposed. Each offered a different version of how this new government would function, right? So the Virginia Plan, introduced by Edmund Rudolph, but was largely drafted by James Madison. This plan called for strong national government with 3 separate branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. That sounds familiar. The legislator would be bicameral, right? 2 houses with representation in both based on state population or financial contribution. This naturally favored larger states like Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. The Virginia Plan also gave Congress broader powers to legislate in case states were incompetent, and even veto state laws, a huge shift towards centralized authority. And then they had the New Jersey Plan. Smaller states weren't thrilled about being outvoted forever under Madison's framework, so William Patterson introduced a counterproposal. It kept the basic structure of the Articles of Confederation, but strengthened Congress's power to tax and regulate trade. Most importantly, it preserved equal representation for each state: 1 state, 1 vote, so that little states like New Jersey and Delaware wouldn't get steamrolled by bigger ones. And then you have the New York Plan by Alexander Hamilton. Clown. Oh, he's just a signer of the Constitution, just a clown. Alexander Hamilton stepped in with his own bold idea. Hamilton argued for a system that looked a lot like the British model: a powerful, almost monarch-like executive elected for life, so long as he acted with good behavior, and a Senate chosen for life as well. The House will still be elected by the people, but Hamilton's plan leaned heavily towards stability and centralized authority. It was too extreme for most delegates, but it showed just how wide the range the ideas were, right? And in the end, none of these plans were adopted, right? With a big state Virginia plan and a small state New Jersey plan, it got locked in a standoff, and the convention itself risked collapse entirely, right? And that's when Roger Sherman of Connecticut proposed what would become known as the Connecticut Compromise, or simply the Great Compromise. Sherman's idea blended the 2 rival visions. In the House of Representatives, seats would be based on population, giving larger states more influence. In the Senate, each state would only have 2 seats, no matter its size, protecting the interests of smaller states. It wasn't flashy, but it worked, and it resolved that fiercest debate, right? Representation. The compromise broke the deadlock and gave both sides enough reason to stay at the table. Compromise became the heartbeat of the convention from that point, and without it, the convention might not have ever been completed. Sherman's model also inspired other key figures. James Wilson built on Sherman's model when designing the system for electing the president, what became the Electoral College. Dozens of men added their voices, ideas, and energy. Franklin reminded them of Providence. Washington presided with steadiness, and Madison himself admitted the Constitution ought be regarded as the work of many heads and many hands. And so what did they create? By September 1787, the framers hammered out a system of government unlike any on the planet. A republic that divided power among 3 branches, checked authority with safeguards, and grounded itself in the consent of the governed. And when Franklin looked at the document, he gave it a pragmatic blessing. I consent to this Constitution because I expect no better, and because I am not sure that it is not the best. The framers left Philadelphia with more than parchment, and by the end of that sweltering summer, they had argued, deadlocked, threatened to walk out, probably sweated through more shirts than anyone can count. The Virginian Plan made the little states panic. The New Jersey Plan made the big states roll their eyes, and Hamilton's plan was basically King George with extra steps. Yet somehow, they didn't kill each other. Instead, they hammered out compromise that actually stuck. They walked out with a blueprint for the greatest nation on earth, a document tough enough to survive wars, crisis, and 250 years of Americans doing their absolute best to screw it up. Thank you for listening. And remember, history isn't boring, especially when 55 guys in a hot room argue themselves halfway through insanity and still manage to invent the longest lasting government on earth. Thank you again for listening. I'll see you next time.